Hey everyone, and welcome to the Natalie Potts podcast. Before we start, if you would like to find out more about how you can build and grow your business, head to the episode notes where you can find a direct link that connects you straight to my WhatsApp. Send me a message and ask me anything related to strategy, sales, mindset, and growing your business. I would love to hear from you. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this episode, be sure to pass it forward. Zoe, welcome. I'm very excited to have you on the Natalie Potts podcast today. I know this is going to be a great conversation. And I always start off saying that, but it's always true because like we were just saying then, I never script any of this. I love a genuine, rich conversation. And I like to just see where things go and then just trust it. Because when you get too scripty, it all gets a bit different. And it's always nice to just see where we can draw similarities and talk about stuff really comfortably in a space. So welcome. Introduce yourself and what you do.
Do you know what? I think this is one of the hardest things to start with when people say, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, where do I want to start?" Zoe Poulton. Hi, everyone. So I very much work within change management. I work with people who want to become change managers. So I do accredited training for them, and I do some consulting as well. I have a few plans, which I'm sure we'll talk about during this podcast, but I generally work with people who want to, maybe they've been in HR for sort of 7 or 8 years and they think actually the change looks really interesting. I want to pivot a little bit, but what do I need to do? What qualifications? But what I'm really big on is making sure people not only get accreditation, but they get that practical application and that support. So a lot of the courses I've seen have just the theory element, but it's bringing that practical. And because I've done a lot of change management, I've been a practitioner for a long time, bringing all that to life for them really. So they come out confident to go into a change management role.
I mean, look, the fact you even said confidence there, we've spoken about practicalities and that's tangibles, pivoting. I'm thinking, what was your background? There's loads there. So let's break it down. Well, let's start off. How did you get into this? Where did you start out?
Where did I start? So I was in the Royal Air Force for 16 years and I was a leadership instructor. So I used to work with a lot of the cadets going through training, which is a huge change for them anyway, but it was very much about that leadership and the practical application of leadership. So the number of times I found myself in the middle of a field at 3 o'clock in the morning in the hoofing rain, I have lost count. But it was that really, here's the theory and here's the practical application of how you do it in the rain. So right towards the end of my career in the military, I did a really big change program, and I went back to. There was a team of 8 of us. Went back to rewrite the officer training course, and I loved it. Change just kind of gripped me and hooked me, and I went, "Oh, can I do this in the real world when I leave? Is there actually a job in change?" Turns out there is. So then I left the military, went into PA consulting as a change manager, went across to EY as a manager in leadership, learning, and change, and then decided to leave and go out on my own. Took that sort of really big leap that we take as entrepreneurs. Came out, started doing some associate work as in different leadership elements, working with women, going to leadership positions. And then I became an accredited change management instructor through the APMG. So I currently instruct for APMG. But if I'm honest, Nat, it was one of these things. I love it. I can see where we could make it better because it's very theory. It's a theory course. Okay. And what I'm finding from feedback and stuff is that people want that practical application. Much like when I was working in the military doing leadership training, the application, why don't we do it in change management or any other courses that I could probably think about? So that is how I got to where I am, creating that sort of program that offers the application support as well.
There's interesting things coming through for me here and I'm going to be a little bit challenging, but what I know is
go for it.
Where we can talk through stuff, which is great. There's one part of me. Well, I'll reverse engineer it if I've made my notes. So our relationship came through because you were curious about how I work, essentially came on like a sales call. And then we've stayed connected doing similar odd things, or going to different events but never quite meeting. Then we met one the other week officially, and it was kind of very much felt like we just clearly get on. Well, you can hear it with us as well, and you'll definitely hear it as we continue to day that. How we bounce off one another, and we've instantly had very good rapport is how I would say it. And because
I agree.
Where we work solo on our own, it can be quite lonely, and it's like, who do you ever rant and rave at, or who do you talk through with this and things like that. And I think our styles are very similar in driven results, go and do it. Like if you've been you've got to implement it, go and make it happen and get results and that kind of outlook, which is great. What I want to share around this part though is that this dawned on me this week when I was working with my mindset coach, that one, we never know what our relationship could evolve to in time, whether I would work with you, you'd work with me, whether we'd do something together, you just never know. And I love that idea of the art of the possible. And I think people have often shutting stuff down all the time on, well, they didn't sign up and that's that. And I've got this real big thing when I'm doing my programs on, I give everything to my clients, especially when you're starting out. And I think, again, people are like, no, I've given enough. And I'm like, no, give every freaking thing you have, because that's a difference. And as you grow, you won't always be able to do that. And that's going to be the scaling thing, etc. But if you can give everything to everybody and make people genuinely feel valued, listened and heard, and all of this is the stuff that we talk about in relationships. This is real business. Business is about relationships. When you can do that, that's where you grow unique relationships, and you never know where it takes you. It's just so profound, the opportunities I've had the last year or so, just by genuinely showing up with my values, having integrity in the way I work, being honest when stuff doesn't work as well, and transparent, and saying when actually I haven't been able to keep to my values as well if I haven't on some things, and just being human and stuff. Like happens, like I said before I got on this podcast today, I had somebody jump on, it said in my emails they're jumping on for a sales call, and I was like, really? And it wasn't my planner, and it irrelevant almost if it's theirs or mine. I just jumped on and was like, I'm in the gym and I'm not ready for this. Let's pick it up in an hour. And they were fine with that. And that's important, that we're just genuine in business, not trying to be anything we're not. So what I was just coming to know with my mindset coach is that often when we're doing sales and building businesses, and this is one of my biggest challenges for clients right now, is they struggle to get leads, struggle to get clients. And I'm like, but not everything's a sale. Stop focusing on closing everyone down all the time and just serve them, ask what they want, give value, but also have the understanding it. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to say this isn't right for you or it's not right for them. That will get you more. And I've had sales conversations. A couple of months ago, I had somebody who wanted to do one-to-one. Maybe she was looking at a few different people. I spent a good hour with her, really exploring things. And it was still a no a couple of days after, but she said, but because of how I felt with you, she goes, like, we're just not quite the right fit for what I need right now. She goes, but she goes, I would highly recommend you for what you do, because she goes, you just gave me so much time, you were genuine, how it came across. And this is this part in just, really delivering for somebody. And this is what the really important part though, that I was working through with my mindset coach, eventually getting there. But she said about, if we always come with a place of, like, I don't particularly like going and getting new leads and all that boring stuff. Like, some people like it. I don't like doing my accounts. But if I actually change my way I look at it, because I said it's just boring. I said, I do it because I know what it gets me. I said, but I'm only into it when I'm really in a good relationship and talking to somebody. And we all know every relationship starts with hello. Every client's come from hello. And she said, just change it that, like, maybe it's just that you could serve somebody and help somebody today with some of it. And it's an extra 5 people you do that with. You never know. And I think that's the thing, is what I love is that don't shut things down. Just let relationships build in business and focus on that, especially if you're struggling. That get energy just won't help you. So I thought that was relevant to share about us, because you can see that where things can evolve, and it's important. I guess, well, first of all, before I shut down that, is what's your perspective on what I shared there?
I couldn't agree more. I literally had a conversation with someone this morning who, it was a virtual coffee. We were going to have an in-person coffee, but there is a train strike today. So I was like, if I get into London, I may not get out. So we've done a virtual. We're going to meet up in a couple of weeks just to chat. She's actually someone who is leaving a big corporate company at some point, should we say, in the future. And she just wants to speak to me about what does entrepreneurship look like? And also she works in change space. So almost what does change look like outside? And I said, yeah, of course, let's have a chat. Just we've been connected by a mutual friend. So I said, yeah. He said, actually, Zoe's the one you want to speak to, all this. And I must admit, at the beginning of the call, I was like, I wonder if she'd want to do my change program. Is this something that would really interest her? And so I thought about that. But actually, we had a brilliant conversation, and I thought, okay, let's just see where this goes. And I hate selling. I'm going to be honest, I hate sales. I would much rather just chat to someone and say, listen, let's talk, let's see where our mutual overlaps are and all that. And actually talking to her, she's in change, but she is a deep comms specialist. So she does all the communications. And what she does is let's say makes communication sexy, but she makes it interesting and fun. So people going through change are actually, oh, I'm not just getting the email, or I'm not just getting, the notice board um sheet of paper, but actually the interaction. So she's brilliant in comms. So we were talking and stuff, and I helped her a little bit because she was talking about how she could structure how she goes into the market as a freelancer or consultant or contractor on her own. And we talked about actually what she wants to do and how she can hit different areas of the market. And
Mm.
in return, she said to me, "Listen, if you on your program, if you want any help with the com side," and I said to her, "Actually, I do because I want to bring in different voices into my program, so
Mm.
we're not just about what Zoe thinks about change management, but we're hearing from different experts." And so suddenly, even though, the first idea might have been, oh, would she come on and do my program? We got a much richer conversation, and we've now got
Yeah.
this kind of mutual relationship where it's like, actually, let's support each other
Mm.
moving forward. And that will continue. And who knows what it looks like in, a year or two.
Mm.
Very similar to how you and I started.
Yeah.
And even before we went live, I was saying to you, no, what are you doing in the future? What can I maybe jump on in the future? Because it's knowing that, and I think with momentum, we even said it wasn't right for me at the time,
Mm.
but and I think I sent you an email message saying, by the way, now not right for me at the time, but I'm watching you and I'm following you. And I thought, God, Zoe, that sounds so stalkerish. But I was like, not right for me, but I like
Yeah.
you. I like what you're doing. I'm watching you. Maybe later we'll do something. So for
Yeah.
me, that's what the conversation should be about, that
Yeah,
longevity,
100%.
not not almost that not that almost scarcity of, oh my God, how many people can I fill on my course? I'm really scared, because your energy shows, I think.
Yeah, it really does. And this is where I love the fact of my background corporate of leading people. I feel sometimes I downplay that. Like I think I downplay it because the experience of leaving, my jump and leap of faith wasn't done how I would have wanted it. It was one of those where I made a decision as I just couldn't stay. The values weren't fitting and everything. And there was loads of stuff with directors that just wasn't nice. But I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I think that I was lost my train of thought. We were saying there about what's my train of thought there?
Long relationships, rich conversations, jumping out of corporate.
I've lost it, but I'm going to stick with that because this is what happens in my brain because I think really super fast. Um, but we just going back to the points you shared around just build the relationship with people. That's it. The leadership part is that I downplay that quite a lot. And I think that when you come into your own business, there's so much pressure on you of things to do, things to learn, all of that. And it's like, but if you just can focus on how you are as a person as well, empathy, qualities. And that was the difference between me as management leader. Like I was a manager at one point, and then leaving when I ran big teams of people, like 400 at a time, that's not an easy gig. And especially when you work in London as well. So it's challenging. I think that that's where I've had a lot of skills that I can use and transfer now, which is really helping me in the stuff like these conversations, the communities I run and stuff, in terms of having to lead by example, having to set the tone, having to have strong boundaries, having to say, actually, yeah, I heard that, I understand, no. And people hated that sometimes in corporate, but the way you would do it in that way, opposed to just, no, it's not happening. And actually, again, people understanding the why, the because, makes a real difference. And those skills I would never, even though I stayed in corporate too long, and I do believe I did, I would never take that away, that experience, because I learned so much to make me who I am now. And I guess that's kind of shared a little bit about my leap. How hard was that leap? Because you earlier said it, but it felt very easy. Like I don't think it was
Which leap?
easy.
Which leap?
Well, leaving the
There were a
RAF,
couple here.
that's big, right?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I joined. So I come from a military family. My granddad was in the military. My dad military. My brother's military. I'm married to someone in the military. So my family is military.
Wow.
My mum isn't. That is pretty much it. Um. So when I was at university, I was a little bit of a partier. Let's just say that. And I didn't really think about after uni. I thought of stuff. I mean, I wasn't going to go to uni. I wanted to go to Marks and Spencer's and be a buyer. So I wanted to do that like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
scheme. And mum and dad were like, no, because that generation, you go to university, you get a career. And it got to like my third year. and I had to start thinking about what I wanted to do. And I thought, oh, I might go to Marks and do their graduate scheme. And oh God, this show my age. I graduated in 2002, and it was impossible to get on, just to get a job. It was just one of those things. It was hard. You couldn't get on graduate schemes. My degree was in psychology. So it wasn't like something that really went into Marks and Spencer's buying graduate scheme. Um, so it wasn't in design or anything like that. So it was like, okay, what do I do? And my dad said, what about the military? I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a go. Went to the military. So I joined the military at 23, did a bit of work and then I went in, and I left at 39 and 10 months. So I did most of my 20s and 30s in the military. And it, for me, they are such fundamental years where you figure out who you are and you figure out what you like to do, what you don't like to do. And I think where you cement your values as well. But of course, my values were the military values. So the military have a really strong set of values, very, very hierarchical, very disciplined. And you know what? That was fine in my 20s because I was learning. It was a lot of fun. I did loads of travel, got to go to New Zealand, got to go all sorts of places. And then I came into my 30s, I think around 32, 33, and I was like, I'm starting to really push a little bit the boundaries. And I must admit, by the time I left, I was ready to. Um, I similar to when you left corporate, my values and the militaries didn't align. And I'd figured that out. I'd worked with some people who were quite toxic, if I'm honest. Quite sick towards the end of my career in the military. And yeah, had to be signed off on medication, all sorts. And I just realized that environment for me didn't work. It was what they say, square peg, round hole. That was me in the military. So that jump was easy to. It was an easy decision to make because I was sick, and if I'd stayed in, I would be even sicker.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to make because that was my whole identity for 2 decades. So it was it's that easy and hard. Now I look back on it, I'm really pleased that I did it, but I can also see some struggles I've had since because of things that have happened and that kind of industry that I was in. Things like not believing in yourself. That kind of, you come out into the civilian world and I know exactly what I'm doing in the military. I used to do some really, really, so say really responsible jobs. Let's go with that. I used to work in air defense, so really good jobs that I knew what I was doing. And I came into civilian world at 40, and everyone around me knew what they were doing. And I was like, oh, and I went into consulting straight in, and all these people had been on the graduate schemes, and they had the most incredible PowerPoint skills, let's just say. When I came in and I was like, no idea what I'm doing. And it was expected that at that age I'd know. Yeah. So it was very jarring.
It's so interesting how similar, and I didn't know all of that. It's so interesting to see how similar we are. Lots of it's very mirrored in that I actually, strangely as well, did a couple of, I think I did like 4 weeks in buying in Sainsbury's because I wanted to see if I wanted to do the scheme and such. And then I was like, no, this is not for me. I was a retail girl, and I can walk into stores now, even with Sainsbury's, and I just see things and know what's right and wrong. And I could just get results, say you need to do this, and this. That's why I do strategy. And towards the end, I loved it for years. I joined when I was 16 and I got 30. I got to be a store manager before 30. And then that's when it kind of was starting to not work for me. And like you say, it was a values bit, and everything was a fight. I was the only, I remember the year I left, I was the only, this was 2022, the only female around the table as such out of 20, like 19 men. And my voice didn't want to be heard. And I was like, why is this such a battle when they should be like, and I don't condone anybody just getting things because they're female or because of LGBT, anything. You shouldn't, like, it should always be the right person for that job, always, with things, and
recognizing there are other voices in the room that could add.
Yeah, we should always be doing that. But that's what annoyed me in the business, is that they could say things they are, but they never aligned to that. And I said once in a meeting, and it was awkward, but I said, like, it's one of the guys, he was a middle-aged white man, and he had a view on females coming through and things like that. And I said, you're the problem. I said, that's exactly the problem that I've got right now. I said, because I don't want to progress anymore, to be honest. I said, and yes, my boss knows it. I said, because I don't see myself having a balance, and the expectation of me is going to be so high. The higher you go, the lesser values are aligned in this business, for one thing, is what I see. Two, I don't particularly think, I absolutely saw what you see, like the toxicity around the females in particular as directors was personal. It was volatile environments. It was horrible. And I didn't get through things, but I got the results, like beyond results I'd had. I got signed off by 3 area managers. It was one Zoom call or Teams call, whatever, that completely took away, like, not quite sure she's what we want yet. And I was like, and I felt like saying, well, why didn't you bother to come in and actually see me and meet me? All that silly stuff. And I think that's what I noticed, that even there's stuff now. I mean, I went through instant private therapy because I didn't go on meds actually, but I was drinking a lot. I was drinking a bottle every night plus. And that's when my parents helped me, and I went straight into private therapy and everything, and had time off, which is that's not how I wanted to leave. I think a little bit like almost similar in some ways for me was I got myself into a place where it was like, it's a non-negotiable now. Like, I'm not staying, I can't stay, and actually I'm not happy. I've got I've got money, I've got a mortgage and everything, but I'm really unhappy, and this isn't what I want. I'd rather go and, I don't know, like, there's no pride with me of any jobs. I'd rather just do something that's very basic, though. I'd have to mentally stimulate my mind because I'm that person, but I would do whatever to make ends meet if I'm that driven and focused. But it's really sad. And I found that leap really hard for quite a while. And even now, I don't have anything to do with business. I don't ever want to talk about it. And I would like lived and breathed it. But it's, I think I did stay too long, for sure, 2 years. And part of that was a bit of COVID, etc. And that's life. And I don't think we can always say stuff like, we shouldn't have regrets. It's like, no, like sometimes we can regret stuff, and sometimes we do make bloody wrong decisions, and that's life. But it's how we then deal with that. But I think that the part around a leap is often on people's minds, that it's a tough thing. And I think sometimes there's some comfort in saying it is tough. Yeah, it is. It will be tough. But actually there's ways of doing it and approaching it, and there's no perfect cookie cutter for this, or no one's done it amazingly. Just work through your way and have support when you do it. I think that was a big thing for me. And also people that get it, like you have military. My dad was his whole career was corporate retail leadership in Sainsbury's, and he did very, very well. And probably some of that was aspirational for me. He's like, I wanted to get to that level. And then when it wasn't the same business, and he was like, it's not the same. It's just not the same now. And it's not.
My dad used to say that to me. My dad said it to me even when I was going through training. So in that first year I was going through training, we were actually on the same station. Oh God. Yeah. Well, I used to have to walk past him and salute him, which was we always had a bit of a giggle. But I was a cadet. He was, I think a squadron leader at the time. And even when I come home at weekends and talk to him, I tell him stuff and he'd be like, what? That's not right. That can't be happening. I'm like, and then he just thought, oh, well, like that in my day. I'm like, no, but he was in 39 years. He was a pilot as well. So they live let's say pilots live a slightly different existence in the military to us mere mortals. But it was very much, what do you mean that? I said, well, things change really fast. So the Air Force you were in, it's not the Air Force I'm in. The Air Force now isn't what it was like when I was in, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I like to see, I've really gone to seeing life as chapters. So you've got your book and it's different chapters. I had a military chapter, I had a corporate chapter, and now I've got my next chapter, which I'm in. So, and that's how I think it's just a different page. So there'll be things that I wish I'd done differently, but I've learned a lot from them, and it's allowed me to get to that next chapter because I've gone through it.
That's interesting, because that's a real mindset shift that you have to have, and you have to be open and vulnerable to that, because that's a challenge in itself. Because like we're both sitting here, and there's not many people I find that can get 30s to 40s and say they work just for one business and then themselves and leave, because they just don't. Like, and we know that of young generations now. And again, no right or wrong, it's how the world is now. It's just different. But I don't meet many people my age that have said, and I get asked when we went to that same event the other week, the lady said to me opposite, she was like, well, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 36. Because I said I've been somewhere for nearly 20 years. She was like, why should you start?
I get that a lot. What do you mean you're in 60 years? I'm like, well, I'm 42.
I know, right?
And do you know the weirdest thing? I think, God, I could have like a 22-year-old child now.
Yeah.
That bit freaks me out a little bit, but hey,
But yeah, I think if you're sitting and listening to this and it's resonating, or you're thinking about like the leap of faith and stuff. Get people around you, know that, there's people that have done it. It is tough at times, but it's not impossible either. I know some people that, like you shared about the identity thing, some of my friends who have been in it have had really challenging times, like severe challenging, more than mine was, and like for a longer period of time. And I think you talk about belief. I call what I always say, I've got self-deluded belief a little bit. Like I just, my dad said, and his strength of character is the strongest person I've ever met, my dad. But he says to me that I've never met someone believe like you. I literally, and it's not an arrogance in that, but I just had belief. I'm like, why not me? And just go for it. And it is bizarre. I find that. And I also find sometimes my natural confidence is just, I was never confident at school, but I am naturally very confident to things. So I have to be more aware of that now, because I think, especially when I was a leader, I noticed that of females that I'd say, well, just go do it. I believe in you. Go on. And like, that didn't actually help saying that. So I get quite annoyed when I see stuff on socials and people are like, yeah, you just got to be naturally, you got to be confident. You got to do this. I'm like, that's not actually,
that doesn't make you confident. Saying you've got to be confident.
What does that mean?
Thanks.
And I saw it once and I challenged it back, and it's like, well, I said, no, like what does it actually mean to somebody to say that? Because that's exactly what I went through, is telling one of my team, Emma, at the time. I was like, Emma, I believe in you. And I was like, I went back to her the next day and I was like, that's really bad advice, Emma. I was like, look, we need to work together on this. I said, and I recognize that. But I think it's interesting to see our paths as well. One thing that's on my mind, and I don't have an answer for it, I'm just aware of it, that when I've spoken to people like yourself that share about they did leadership training, I wonder where the difference comes in I led people and was trained from that perspective. And I sometimes think to myself, is it, I don't know if it's wrong or not, this is why I don't have an answer for it, but my mind sometimes is a bit like, who are you to do leadership training people and say you know it all about leadership stuff, and then they evolve into more of that when you haven't been a leader? I guess it's walk the walk stuff. But then I'm thinking, like, as you're talking about it, but when you've got the knowledge and experience and you do know it inside out to a degree, like, can you see where I'm coming from with that? What's the difference from your perspective in that?
So between almost the experience versus the qualifications, are we going, or?
Yeah, almost. It's like, I guess it's like that. It's like almost like saying having a degree, but versus work experience with that. If you haven't ever been a leader, is it right then that you can naturally just run a business without that experience? And almost I guess where that probably comes from a bit more is me, because I'm really big on empathy as much as I can do. Does that make sense?
And this is a huge thing for me. I always think you've got the theory and then the experience. So practical, and even like I said, with the change management program I've created, it's got both, because you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
So let me think. I'll use myself as an example, then I'll explain how we used to do it in the military. That might help a little bit. So for me personally, I was a leader in the military for different groups, big groups, small teams, big teams. Teams that were actually across the globe. When I was head of HR, I had 20 in my team immediately on my floor plate, and then another 20 dispersed. So loads of different types of leadership as well. So what I've done with this is just the way I like to do it personally, is as I've got the experience, say in leadership, as I've gotten the experience, I've always done the qualifications that match it, that sort of sit with it. So I went and did my master's in leadership studies through Cranfield University. So I got all the theory and the models. And it was quite nice, because some of the stuff I was doing and I was going, oh, that's what that makes sense. Now I've done a bit of it, I get it. Whether it's right to do one before the other, I mean, that's like, chicken and egg a little bit, isn't it? But I think you always need both. I don't personally think you can teach something. There's a phase one of my mentors use is like when you're creating courses and stuff, do it from knowing rather than knowledge. So doing it from knowing because you've done it yourself, rather than knowledge, you've read it in a book and now you're teaching someone else. So it's that, do it from experience. You may have also theory behind it. In the military, slightly different, because a lot of the cadets that come through will go straight into leadership positions. So literally you're out, bang. Especially people like the engineers, because they usually have big teams. Air defence, the area I was in, straight into looking after teams of junior teams. So the training was slightly different in that it was theory and also practical. So some of them might have come straight out of university. And I'm not saying you can't be in leadership positions before that stage, but some of them would just be done academics, come out of university. And so in that, however long we had with them, 6, 8 months, it would be, here's the theory behind leadership, and now let's go and put you in practical situations so you can try it out and you can test things and you can learn from failure and you can get all that. Really, the one thing the military does really well is the feedback loops in their training. So we do feedback loops, hot feedback, hot debriefs, cold debriefs, all of that. So at least when they come out and they go into that environment when they're a leader, they're like, I've tried a few things, I've learned the theory, I've tried a few things. But also when they come out, they've got lots of support around them. So they've got those that have been in that area for a long time, different ranks as well. So they get it from different perspectives. So yeah, for me, it's that very much that balance between having that knowledge from learning theory and having that expertise from having done it yourself. And I think you can do it. Let me use coaching as an example. So I'm going off on one now. Let me use coaching. So I think people can have coaching conversations. I'm talking about pure coaching conversations without accreditation, and they can have those conversations. However, when they get the accreditation and they learn those different skill sets and the different theory, they become so much better at it. So I think they work together. And I say that from having done my level 7 accreditation. And even though I'd been coaching on a different accreditation for a long time, when I upskilled to that level 7, I was like, oh, that's a really good technique. And I can just slip this in. And it gave me so many more tools in my toolbox.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I guess it's then the way you position it and present it like that in the articulation, and that's where the people want to know the why, and that's how you engage people, isn't it, in the understanding and seeking to understand. So yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. And I think that, I guess if I'm stuck with someone and all that going forward, for me it's the understanding and to ask those deeper questions more of, well, tell me what that looks like to you and your interpretation, just as we've done there, and then having the ability to share that, opposed to somebody just telling somebody you need to do this, you need to do that, but you haven't been there, done that. So as much as there's a different sympathy and empathy that comes into play when you've experienced the doing of it. And like we know, like any of it, that we can do all of the skills we know, but until you physically do something. And that's my thing, that it's just like, I used to say that, oh, it's easy doing leadership, and I used to say to some people, like, go and do that in London stores, like go and do it, do it in people that are challenging. And it's a tough gig, and until I'd experience it, and that's why I ended up staying in London for so long, and that's why I struggled in Surrey, because it was just so slow paced, and I'm really driven and next thing, and that was for lots of people that was tough. They didn't want to do it, and that's okay if people don't want to, but many just couldn't keep up with that. So then the people who were good at it just ended up having to stay because it was a hard gig. So yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. And I appreciate the fact that you've taken that so well as well, because I understand for some people they could get quite defensive on that. But it is one to talk through, because sometimes we can see lots out there. And I just think to people, well, I guess as well, it's a personal thing. And this is where, again, the values come in for me, and saying how you operate, even in a small business, just you, is so important in terms of your values and how you act and behave in business. Because for me, this is really important, that you live and breathe that in your business, and you say to people what you're great at, and you say, look, that's not my gig as well, and you're transparent. And I think that people respect that. I know I'm very big on, I don't like our education system, which will be a whole nother topic, but
we've spent hours on that one.
Like, we should be talking about relationships and stuff that actually matters in school, and stuff like leadership, opposed to how, plugs are useful, but all the stuff I learned about Pythagoras I've never used in my life, and then we wonder why we're all in therapy in our 30s.
I wish I'd been taught about finance, things like finance.
That's what I mean, right?
Oh God, yeah.
I do believe massively in education, and look, I'd love to put kids through private education, because I just genuinely would, and that's what I think. But I think we do need to realise that it is important, as much as we don't need grades. And you see that recently in August of, I've made it and I didn't get any grades at school. My dad didn't have any grades at school. He left at 16. He was a little git, and he did incredibly well for the life he's wanted and created. But, education is good, and you do need to have that. And that's where, for me, I qualified as a coach because I wanted to qualify someone that was very established and very credible, because it meant a lot to me. It's important that I stand by that. I think that, like, we're going to say these things, we live and breathe them. And I think that's where, don't become the little junkie that does everything, but you got to practice what you preach, and you can talk, but you got to walk the walk with it, because it's really important. And I think that's important for the fact that this world, as you said, is absolutely just changing and adapting at a ridiculous rate compared to what it used to be. And I think that will continue to be the way. You've got to be on your game. And I think that those skills they help you to keep sustainable.
Yeah, I completely agree.
To be a big ingredient for whether businesses make it in the future, because at some point, let's be honest, it's a tough gig running a business. It's not easy. I think some people can make it look easy. I'm sometimes aware, I think sometimes I can make some things look easy, and I think it looks like all my ducks are in a row and I've got my issues all together, and it's like, I don't feel that way.
For me, it depends which day of the week it is, to be honest. But it is that I've had so many people say to me, "Oh my goodness, you look like you're smashing it." And
I get it.
I love your Instagram and all that. I'm like, okay, thanks. As I'm like the swan analogy of everything looks graceful, and I'm like going as fast as possible underneath. It's just
been so funny recently, that
it's just this. It's weird, isn't it? It's just
my friend the other week. I can't say how many times I've said it the last 2 weeks. It's just been hilarious. She's sending me videos of ducks now.
You got called a duck, didn't you? I saw that. On your
it's so funny. She was like, because I just ring her for a rant, and then she's like, "You know this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And she's one of those great soundboards that everybody needs. And I was having a walk, and I was like, "This and this and this and this and this," and she's like, "You're like a duck," and I was like, "Right." And she was like, "Yeah, like those little legs are going." And she's an intuitive manifestation coach, so she knows me inside out. And I was like, "Actually, I think I'm a swan." And I prefer more graceful, thank you. It was so funny. So now it's just complete banter, and everything that comes up with a swan, I'm like, that's me.
So you're pretty much saying, if anyone listening would like to send you memes about ducks and swans, send them to Natalie Potts, please, not to me.
So funny. But it is that, isn't it? Like, everyone looks at us and I think, I must be swimming around like a swan for everybody. I don't feel it. I do feel a duck. That's the irony.
Also, do you know, I always say to people, it's like, right, okay, I'm going to have a lot of humility here, and I'm going to tell you a few things, because I don't want people to think everything's fine, like everything's perfect, because it suddenly becomes unachievable. Oh, what she's doing is unachievable. It's like, no, it's really not. Look, I mean, I'm not going to show you my study, but let's just say my study is full of paper. And I was like, oh, it must, and people would not assume that. They're like, oh, clean desk, everything. It's like, no, I write on paper with a pencil, because that's what works for me, but it also means I have a messy desk. And it's like thinking you need to be perfect, isn't it? And I know you talked a bit about in your stories today about actually being on calls and not having makeup on or not having this. It's like, I mean, my hair's full of dry shampoo right now. It may look like it's washed and all thing, but it's got a lot of body in it because it's full of dry shampoo, because I haven't had a chance to wash it yet. But it's that realizing that things aren't perfect, and we are all human beings trying to do our best. I think that's where the best connections come from, isn't it? When you actually open up and show that vulnerability.
And look, and I said it last night, I had a friend that I've not stayed in touch with enough, bless her, and she's going through a tough time, and I've got a few friends sometimes where that's life, for them, and it's tough. And it was she was like, "Have you got some time today?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I have." And I was like, "I'll speak to you later." And then it just threw me a bit in a good way as well, that I was like, Christ, I haven't spoken to her in a few months. That's on me as well. And that's because I just get so work focused, and I've not put it as a priority. And then I was like, and then you just have a bit of reality check, like, life is tough for people, and no one has it in order. And I said that, yes, I've turned my life around compared to where I was with retail and what they knew of me before and stuff, but it doesn't mean that's been easy. And I think that's sometimes the thing, is because it's easy to judge people that, like myself, that I don't have kids and things like that, and pressures, and everything. Well, it's easy. It's but it doesn't mean I don't have things too, just because. And I sometimes say
other pressures.
oh, I don't have kids, so yeah, it's that I, can't even think what you're going through. And I'm like, oh no, because I still have things. Well, it's still challenging in different ways. Um, it's just different. And I think that that's where, like you just said, we're very, very hard on ourselves naturally. And the reality is that most of us are winging it a lot of the time. And that's anyone. And I did a post in it a while ago, not too long ago, when I was at the gym. I was in the evening there. And I was looking around and like I have a very much an outlook that if people want to get fit, then you can. You can all start somewhere and stuff. And people say it's hard for me. And I was like, but if you show up in a gym, I'm like, they're there. Like you've shown up. That's my bit.
Sometimes
And
the hardest bit.
yeah. And I was looking around and I said to myself, I was like, I don't have imposter syndrome. I don't look around a gym and go, oh, look, anything like that. But I haven't massively because I've always had a trainer. I was very conscious that when I started out that I wanted help on it and never wanted to hurt my body and stuff. But I just had a moment where I was like, I could be standing next to an accountant or the CEO of bloody Coca-Cola or something, whatever, right? And probably more in David Lloyd, this would have happened versus Pure Gym now, but you get what I mean. You could be standing there, they could be so unhappy with their life, the fact they work all the hours under the sun, they never see their family, they could have all the money in the world and not get any time to spend it. They could be really unfit and actually hate looking at their body in the mirror and think they look horrible, feel horrible. And I just thought to myself, so we put people on pedestals because of money and success. But the reality is they could be the most unhappy person. And I know lots of successful people, very, very unhappy. So that's where I'm always like, I've shown it with clients today, actually. I said, I'm very driven. I can be obsessed with my business. I said, but I am also keen on, I know till now, like I said to you earlier, that now Christmas, I'm going to be putting in a lot of hours on work because as much as people say that you can't associate time and hard work, like I value hard work too. And that's personal to me. I don't have to change that for other people that say you shouldn't think that. I know I shouldn't think that, but I do. And I enjoy work. I enjoy working hard. And I was just thinking about that it's going to be a tough few months and that's okay. You if you're going to have to do that, do it. Don't get sucked into what everyone else is doing. But I won't do that at the point that I know I'll do 5 months of that because that'll really move the needle in my business. But I know that like in September I'll go for a holiday. So I would rather take, even though I work hard, and I'd rather still take 5 years to build something incredible that I want versus 3 and kill myself. I know it's going to be challenging and I'm going to sacrifice bits, but I'm not going to sacrifice to the detriment of, like I said, like yesterday, I could have said, I haven't got time to talk to you. And I knew I needed to talk to my friends. And I trust myself in that. And I think as well, we have to trust ourselves more in business than we do and listen to our gut on things. And I don't think we slow down enough to speed up on that. And I think that that's where, again, it links back to the values of, I do have to have that trip point of, remember, you do this for more time with your family. You do this for a future with, kids and stuff like that and Tom and stuff. So, I think there's a very thin line with that. And I think there isn't a right size or right answer or model. You've got to work out what you want. And that's a big thing for people that most people actually, and I'll say most, like lots of people don't know what they want. And you've got to give yourself that space and time and a bandwidth to say, what do I want from my life? Really, like genuinely, what do I want?
Do you know what? It's really interesting you say that because something you just said, I want to pick up on. You talked about putting people on a pedestal. That bit how we shouldn't do. I've literally got a post coming out on Monday about that. It's already scheduled in. It's ready to go.
Yeah.
About how we put people on. It's the only one I've got scheduled. I'm literally, this is my content writing weekend. I was like, oh, and it's about, because I realised something I did when I came out of the military. I put people on pedestals.
Yeah.
Because they were so much further than me, the same age, but so much further. Forgetting, like I said, they've done 20 years in their industry. I've done 20 in my industry. And I'm sure it would be the same if they came into the military at that point. But it's that really, and it took me a long time to break that shift mentally and go, no. And I think my post says something along the lines of, put yourself on that pedestal. It's something like that. It's like you put yourself. Why? It's like you said about why can't it be me? And your attitude is very much like, why not me? For ages, I was like, oh, could I do that? Oh, am I good enough? And then I just had a bit of a word with myself. I literally should have, because I do a lot of work with growth mindset and I do a lot of workshops on it. And I thought, hang on a minute, practice what you preach here,
Yeah.
Zoe. And I had to really think. So I just thought, hang on, let me shift that. But it can be really hard. And talking about the sort of success as well and figuring out what you want, your own values. This is something I had another shift I had actually when I left. Let's say it was beginning of last year because I was at EY for a while and I was in leadership learning and change. I was a manager at EY and I decided to leave. My mum thought I'd lost my mind. She was like, "Oh my goodness, stable job, really good company. What
Yeah.
are you doing?"
Yeah.
Especially when I said I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left. That was, whew, thought I almost gave her a heart attack, bless her. But my military friends, a lot of my military friends were like, "You're at EY, you've made it. It's the pinnacle. It's the big,
Yeah.
one of the big four." And I didn't have a wobble leaving EY. And the reason being is because I really reassessed what success means to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wasn't what societal expectations were, even though
Yeah.
they were a lot of pressures of, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
you're at EY." I was like, brilliant, but it doesn't suit me. It
Mhm.
what I want for my own life, especially after having spent so long in the military. Now I'm kind of out and I can wear nail varnish. I can put make, I can do all this stuff that
Yeah.
I couldn't. I can not have my hair in a band, all that stuff. I was like, what else can I do? What else do I want to do? And EY, as lovely as my time there was, and I learnt loads, it didn't fit what I wanted, what success looked like to me. Success for me is a bit more freedom and
Mm.
that control over my own life a bit more and control of who I work with, what I do, that flexibility in the week. And I just didn't get that from working at any corporate. It could have been EY, it could have been any of them, but isn't it interesting? We just have to shift that mindset to
Yeah.
ignore societal expectations a bit and really focus on what we want. But it is, like you said, doing that deep work about my values, my core purpose in life.
Yeah. And look, I often say, like Simon Sneak stuff, that it starts with you, like the awareness part. It starts with your why. And
Yeah.
you've got to have that to bring the change. Then you decide that you want something different and you take action, and that brings the change. And you've really got to go through that process. And I'm not sitting here saying any of that is easy. Like, I do think in generations, you'll see a shift in terms of, like we were saying earlier, the fact you won't see like the longevity of staying in one company. That actually didn't do me any favors at the end. And it certainly didn't when I went for senior roles with competitors a couple of years before. It was like, "You don't like change." And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, I've not stayed, linear. My success was linear in one way, but I said I did lots of different roles within the business. So I said, okay, but that's the outlook. And I think I work with clients now of kind of mid 30s, 40s, and it's like talking to a newbie in business. And I'm like you said, the pedestal part. And I'm like, what? I was like, you are the expert in something. Like, you've got years of experience and knowledge. I'm like, why are you
Yeah.
acting like a newbie on this? Like, there's sometimes they need a bit of a pep talk, and they're like, "Oh, I know now." It's like, no. and
My husband does it. He goes, "Zoe, back yourself. I'm
yeah,
backing
and
you.
I
Back you."
think
Yeah.
I think we downplay ourselves, and I think we have to back ourselves more. I always say it's easier to come down a peg or two than raise your game.
Yeah.
And even if that's a little tad of arrogance, which it often never is, but even if it is, have high standards and put yourself up there and just bring it down a bit, but go for it. Because it's like when we used to do drama, they used to say that what you think is this, there's like 10 times it, and it's not going to be close to what it needs to be. And I remember that with my boss once, he used to say, like, whatever you guys feel like you're doing at the minute, you need to 10 times it because it's not enough. And we were like, wow. And he was like, and then it's not going to be enough. And there's a part of that we need to do that in ourselves with
Yeah.
what we can actually give and do. And we only need to think something like client wise, like 10% more knowledge or experience than our ideal client has anyway. So we put a lot of pressures on ourselves with things. And I think this is where it's the journey part, and you've got to enjoy that process when you're building your own business. The same as, that's why I talk a lot around fitness, and then trust the process. And if you can work on yourself, which is kind of the part I was getting to with the fitness analogy a while ago about, I can look at somebody who's very successful and I can think, but I've done the work on me. I've transformed my life in understanding how my body works, how my mind works. They're really unhappy because they've never done that part. They don't know who they are and what they stand for. And
Yeah.
that, I think, that's the stuff I think is education that we should be talking about more, etc. That's the stuff that's really going to change the world and make a big impact.
For me, that's what moves the needle in your self
Yeah.
development, like your personal development, and actually that they're your foundations, because otherwise you will flip between different things, not sure what you want to do, different careers, and it will never feel right. I call it the fine. I always say fine, but not fine. Everything's fine. You know, I'm getting paid, but it's not fine because you've got that real niggle of something's not right. And it's usually because something's not aligned to your values. If you haven't done that work on your values and what you want in that bigger picture of life, then you will not find the answer outside in a job,
right.
because it comes from you first.
And it's interesting what you shared about freedom a minute ago. And part of mine was that I wanted the freedom to do what I want when I want. And I'm not gonna lie, actually, even in retail, because I was the leader, I pretty much did my own schedule and what I wanted anyway. But I still wanted I didn't have a voice. And I guess I felt shut down on things, and that I didn't like. But I'm doing a talk next month, speaking, and it is around the risk of not taking a risk. That's what it's called. And this idea of, you've got to take the leap and you're only here once. And a bit like, I think one of our biggest regrets, ironically, I did a posting this morning, was around, like you were sharing there, that we live up to others' expectations of what they expect of us versus our own. We conform to so much, and that's often the biggest regret in life. There's a lady, Bronnie Ware, if you're interested, she talks about this.
Oh, I've seen, the regrets of the dying.
Yeah, and that's number one. So it's interesting, but also going back to linking that to the part of what people not knowing what they want. I spoke to someone recently, and they just literally sat opposite me and was like, actually, it was interesting. They challenged me and said, because they'd won a position on my one of my courses, which I stuck to. I'm not sure I'd do it again, but it's a learning. And then she said, am I your ideal client? And I was like, no. I was like, not really. I said, I like these as in disc dominant, driver, results driven. I said, and she was like, that's not me. And I was like, no. And I said, but we had a good relationship, and I valued the honesty. And I said, no. And I said, and that's helped me realize that in now the conversations I have with people, that's how I get the best out of myself and you in this experience. And that's how we'll work well together as a dynamic piece. And that's important that both do, because we're both growing and learning. But they said, like, I don't know what I want. And I was like, but that's another thing. I like to work with people that know what they want. And that hit me, is that when somebody comes on a sales call now, I'm going to be that open and honest. And often that's why I've got, clients as well, as because I've said how much you earn and stuff like that. And they're like, and then I said, why me? I said, because you made me uncomfortable. And I was like, good. And they said, well, what was it though? They said, because you asked me what I earn. And that's uncomfortable because I'm not where I want to be. And I said, but that's what we're going to do. So that's okay. I've got that in my bag anyway. I can talk that with you. But again, we don't ask ourselves the tough questions, and we don't be honest with ourselves, and we're not aware of those things. And I can't work with people to some degree. I can work on some areas of purpose, but there's elements that I would probably refer them to people I know who are very good with that side of things, and that have maybe more patience even. But I like people to work with people who know what they want in life.
Was it it's stages, isn't it? It's stages. First, you've got to figure out what you want, your purpose, and what you want to do. Then you go and work with that, and she drives you forward and helps you. Yeah. And funny enough, I was just reflecting on when you and I first spoke. We got on that first sales call. We'll call it sales call. And I came off that call thinking, I really like Nat, but I don't think we're right. I don't think this is right for me right now.
Yeah.
And I only just realized what it was. But I didn't quite know where I was yet.
Yeah.
I didn't know where I was. So some of the questions you're asking me, I was like, I'm not sure what the answer is. I want to give you an answer. And I came off going, I'm not ready yet to work with Nat. It was that flip of not, she's not right for me. It's like, I won't get the most value out of working with you at the minute because I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, I'm a few months too early.
Yeah.
So people go through those different stages, don't they?
And that's what it is. And there isn't the right and wrong. And I think, again, like, often we want to have the answer now and then as well. And I know for me, whenever I invest in somebody, I like to know, do my due diligence, and I like to know what's what. And often I'm looking 6 months to 9 months ahead. Like, I'm just really speaking to someone at the moment, because I'm like, I love what you do. I'm not there yet, but I know that's what I probably want, because I like their style. I love one-to-one mentors, what I've realized now as well. I've done a mix of masterminds groups. I get a lot of fulfillment internally just from being one-to-one with people. And maybe, do you know what? I've said it before on some things. Maybe that's a validation piece as well. I like to do well at stuff that I do. And I get that sense of validation probably more one-to-one. And sometimes I don't think that's, people like, you should validation. I don't think that's a bad thing sometimes. that we're honest on things, just say, yeah, like I want that.
It's being aware. It's being aware. It's kind of almost not bad or good. It's just you've
Yeah.
got to have an awareness of what makes you tick because you want to do more of that. It's like when we talk about like things like strength scope and some of those psychometrics that we build on strengths. Well,
Yeah.
what are your strengths? What do you want to build on? What do you, because we're supposed to be enjoying life. You know, life is here. We only get one shot. What can I build on more that's going to actually I'm going to enjoy doing?
And I guess if I really think about it, the word that comes to mind with the whole of this, to wrap this up as well, is that it's communication. And that's communication with ourselves, and it's communication with others. And communication is often the biggest thing that left was relevant to any conflict in business that we had. I said it was often I was sitting disciplinaries and stuff, and I remember sitting with my manager and I said, you're the problem today. He was like, why? And I was like, because you didn't bloody communicate, did you? And he was like, no. And I was like, for goodness sake. I said, you're wasting my time sitting here doing this. And I was like, you just had to communicate, didn't you? But we don't communicate. And Tom and I are massive on that in our relationship. And we don't get it right at all some of the time. But we're very big on communication and what that looks like, because we know that that's often where relationships fall down, and that's all relationships. And if you can't communicate with your own self,
Yeah.
There's no difference in that, right?
Do you know what though? Neil and I have been married 15 years on the 11th of September, so just about 15 years. We've been together for 17, and we don't really argue, but when we do, it's because someone, usually me, hasn't communicated properly, let it bottle up, and then suddenly I say something that's just, and I know it's something petty, or I say something and he goes, and he won't let it go, whereas he's really relaxed, but he just goes, no, Zoe, that's one step too far, and then we just go, rah, rah, rah. And then it ends up with me probably having a cry and going, oh, I'm really sorry. And him like, oh, and then we talk, and it's like, oh, that's better.
Yeah.
Another thing, just when you said about communication, talking to someone this morning about it, when I talk about change and change management, I would say leadership and communications for me are the two biggest things about change management.
Yeah.
We often say when there's change going on, it's communication with a small c, because you just do it because you send emails out and that. But actually, everything is communications in the different ways you do it, how often you do it. If people hear what you think you're saying, all the biases around things and everything, it's so big in relationships, corporate. Even when you're talking to your friends, it's huge.
Yeah. And it's everything, and it's how you act, it's your body language, it's all of it, it's what you don't say as well with some stuff. And I'm always very conscious of that with people, in terms of, and that's what I used to see in corporate. I used to always think I saw things differently, not in a cocky way, but I would just sense when something wasn't right with somebody. And I remember actually one key example of this was starting a new store as a manager, and I had a team that probably weren't where they needed to be, was my feedback, if I was put it professionally. And I put it in other ways to my boss at the time. I was like, are you having a laugh? But I just remember one of the colleagues, there was something right, and I went and had a chat with them because I think they were late or something like that. And I was like, look, come on, pull it together, type of thing. I said, what's going on? And he broke down. I was like, oh gosh. And I went and sat down with him, and I did a lot around mental health, and I've done that with shout crisis as well. So I knew the ways to have conversations with somebody about their mental health. And he said some things that he hadn't like even shared with his parents and stuff. And it was very open. And I could instantly build rapport like that quite quickly, which would frighten a lot of people when people are vulnerable that soon. But I went out and told the team, and I was like, well, do you know he's got gosh, I can't remember the condition he had. I said, but do you know he's got that? And they were like, no. I was like, how long have you worked here? And they was like, oh, about like a year, 6 months, 9 months, some of them. And I was like, you guys should know that stuff though. I said, you should know that.
Team, get to know your team.
I said, but I said, that kind of stuff, he's not being a dick like you think he is. He's not late deliberately. If you actually go and spend some time with him and talk and seek to understand, then you'll find out that's that. And then ask them, what do you need? How can I help you? And I said, that's that level of strong emotional intelligence, which is again probably something we could learn in school, but that's that proper understanding, isn't it? That's that communication. It's the what's not being said as well, what you don't read the room in a different way. And that's again probably what I want to do more with my clients, is when I know that there's, they're not replying to be a pain in the bum for me. They're not waking up going, I'm going to annoy Nat today, which is what I used to say in work. I was like, you don't rock up and go, oh, I'm going to be late just to annoy Nat. And I said, it's the same with clients. They're not doing it deliberately. So go and ask them, look, this is what we've agreed. This is that. Nip in the bud. Again, some people I see like throwing contracts around as legal stuff. And I'm like, just have you had a conversation with them? Have you said what's going on? Have you just on it? And that's why I love the directness of how I am in one way, in that I'm so transparent that you know what you get. And I'm just going to say, look, let's just be open and honest about it. Let's have a conversation like adults. And if people aren't, then you follow what you need to. Absolutely. But on the whole, I think we could nip a lot in the bud just by being better communicators in business.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people scared. They're scared to do it because it's that, well, what if that person thinks poorly of me because I've stood up and had this conversation? It's like, so what if they do? You need to have that conversation, because otherwise it gets worse and worse.
Yeah. Gosh, look, it's incredible. I know we could talk for hours and hours and hours, and we probably have to next time break it down in terms of this is what we're going to talk about, and that's that.
I knew it was a bad idea when you went, we've got no script. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, let's go now.
God, you want to do a night out? Yeah, honestly, bless. But I love this stuff. This is where I like come into my own, and I love what I do with coaching and stuff like that. And that's like, you can't buy passion like that. You just can't, and you can't fake it. So yeah, I absolutely have loved this. I've really valued your time. It's been incredible. How can people connect with you?
So I'm across, I think, LinkedIn, just my name, Zoe Poulton, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, generally I have got a website. Let's just say my website is under construction at the minute, because I like I was saying, I've pivoted a little bit in what I want to do. So creating my change management and focusing on change management, and creating the program, but just making sure all the tech behind it, all the website and everything catches up. So the best place is probably LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram.
Yeah, look, I know businesses that run without a website, so happy days.
I'm tempted right now, to be honest. I'm tempted to put all those 404 pages that go, you can't get in, and instead of all the work that goes behind, then redoing it.
It's like with some people, I work with some clients who don't have any social media presence, actually. And some people around me, of course, it amplifies and leverages anything. Of course it does. But I do know, it's like, you do know word of mouth still exists, right?
Referrals are the most powerful.
You can talk to people about what you do. And it's incredible. We just put like, people were putting stuff off recently. I can't put it out because I haven't done this, I haven't done that. I'm like, just get it out there. Just do it.
You know what that was? Do you know that was me with my website? I just thought, oh, I can't start talking about this program and all this, but I thought, well, I can, because the website can just come later. Whereas before, another mindset shift, I would have gone, no, everything needs to be perfect first before I push it out. But otherwise, you wait years and then you don't implement. So
no. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Loved it.
If you liked today's talk, go ahead and hit subscribe, and make sure you commit to one thing when you walk away. I really think this is a gift we can all give ourselves. And if you'd like help in growing your business, hit the show notes and find the direct link to me on WhatsApp. Send me your question and I'll get straight back to you. Thank you for your time.